ataki dostępne! Jest to wombo combo ze strony Aatrox!
Welcome to the Amazon European Masters, live from the studio in Berlin. Today is an exciting day as we finally enter the knockout stage of the tournament. The 8 best ERL teams will fight for the trophy and regional pride. My name is Orchid. I'm joined by Dino and Nymera as we get ourselves ready for our first quarterfinal between LFL's GameWard and NLC's X7 Esports. Gentlemen, how are we feeling?
Great, we're back in studio. I get to catch up with you guys again, and we get to catch up with some great League of Legends here in the ERL scene.
Hopefully, that is.
Hopefully.
How are you doing, Dino?
I'm doing great. I mean, once you go to the studio, you know it's serious business, and I think for the teams as well. I mean, group stage, anything can happen. It's best of 1, but now we get into the thick of things. Best of 5 is finally here, and I'm very interested to see what these teams can actually do.
I mean, we already said goodbye to 8 teams in group stage because it's now behind us already. But before we head into the knockouts, let's do a recap of what happened. There have been many highlights and some surprises, and one of those surprises, Nymera, I need to say, is the fact that LVP and Ultraliga haven't done too well.
Yeah, I think that, you know, when you come into this level of competition, someone has to lose out, especially when you have very dominant regions like we do in the Amazon EU Masters. We did have the surprise of the Unicorns doing very well in their own group, but the other surprise here is how many pentakills we've had in this tournament. We've had 4 so far.
It has been insane. I mean, it is the stage where all these young players really want to show what they're worth, and these veterans actually want to show up that they still have it. But the fact that we start with a pentakill from a Gnar says enough. These players are hungry to show up at the biggest stage, and they're doing it, I would say, with flying colors.
And that was Adam getting gifted that as well. First ever competitive pentakill obviously meant a lot to them. Attila's had a few more. He had one right after that.
Yeah, this one I would say was earned. There was actually the fight was against Thorsis. It was a game that wasn't really too spicy anymore because I think at the end, Attila gets 15 kills in total, which is the most kills we had in a single game.
Yeah, so you can see, again, just these individual performances, again, really show something that we know about the ERL scene. We love to scrap at this level. You can see it from teams which have gone into the LEC with that level of talent as well. Look at a team like, even like BDS, even though they had a difficult year in the LEC, they love to scrap, and this is the kind of style that we continue to show at this level in European Masters.
And it's more about the clash of the styles as well. I mean, if you get a pentakill on a Kalista, it can look like a really weird fight, but it means that Venzer needs to really hold his space in midst of all those chaos, and that's the chaos we're going to see as well right now. Like, it's best of 5, it's a whole different territory, and these teams don't actually know how the enemy team is going to play. You can see GameWard getting pentakills, but the question is, how do you respond? What will you do to stop this team from doing so? And that's the first time for every team going up into those best of 5, unless if you're facing teams from your own region.
I mean, that's only what's already behind us. I mean, looking into the future,
so much to still be played.
I mean, I hope to see another pentakill as we, you know, have to dive into this bracket as well, because, you know, after group stage, we move into knockouts. Now we have our, the stakes have been set. Now, looking at these 8 teams that are going to face each other, one thing I need to say, Dino, it's LFL versus EU again? No, what's happening here?
Yeah, you can call it what you want. You can call it the European Masters or the LFL Masters. The LFL came to play, and they have never been as dominant as this run. They have all 4 seeds into the brackets, which means 50% of the bracket is just LFL. The biggest missing thing for me is Ultraliga. We know they've been rebuilding for a while, but getting no team into the knockout stage, that gotta hurt.
Yeah, we already touched upon this a little bit, but Unicorns of Love, then again, is the one that surprised me the most. I mean, they were pretty dominant in their group.
Now, and actually listening to a lot of the interviews that we've had from some of the players, I actually think of Dusty as well when it was the Voxner talking about this, just saying that there are just a lot of good teams at this tournament, and they consider Dusty to be one of them. I think Unicorns are up there too, and when we were, I can't remember who it was doing the interview from them, they were saying, yeah, we are of a similar level to the other LFL teams, where there is this gap between them and the rest of the competition. The Unicorns, they came out first seed from a group with Vitality B in it. They looked very good doing so, especially compared to Spring, where they really were just mid-jungle or bust. They're a very consistent team now, and this whole bracket is now getting very interesting with their inclusion into it.
But then again, I have to mention, though, and I don't like saying it, but LVP, where are you? I mean, it's been a while that we've seen LVP have great success now, I know.
I mean, they have Heretics in there. I think Giants were another one of those favorites to maybe get out of groups. They stranded at 3-3. I think in general, if you look at the bracket, we see two regions that are really solidifying themselves, the LFL and the NLC, getting 2 seats into the bracket. While the other regions, they are still kind of banking on one team. So they only have one chance to actually make it. But hey, if that team makes it, you still win.
I mean, Namira, you got 3 seeds in LLC. Do you actually need them?
Well, things kind of happen fairly similar to Spring if we're kind of recapping what's happened in terms of the other regions that we've got, because you know, we did have 2 teams in groups and then getting through into the knockouts in Spring. We had the same hit. We did lose JDXL in the play-ins, but again, just making sure that we're on the board in the knockouts and in contention.
Now, we just talked about the LFL teams, but I want to emphasize just how dominant they have been. For the first time ever, all 4 LFL seeds made it into quarterfinals, and yeah, you already said it. It's the LFL Masters. I don't know what's happening. I call it LFL versus EU, but it doesn't mean that we have 4 similar teams. All these teams that made it through to knockouts have their own style.
Yeah, that's actually the really scary part about it. If you look at the LFL teams, you get 4 really different teams that are going to take on this bracket. It's not like you have one style that one team has really refined and the others are a bit worse at. They all have their own unique style, and that's something to watch out for this European Masters.
The first team I want to talk about is BDS Academy. I mean, Adam is in that top lane just wrecking up people.
Yeah, and particular if we were going to start separating out these LFL teams together and say, look, what are these individual teams doing? BDS Academy are unparalleled at playing through lane pressure and top lane. They have their mid jungle, which helped that as well when you've got Sheo and the likes getting active in the first 15 minutes of the game and just being where they need to be and allowing Adam to just play through the 1v1. He plays so many different champions to enable that.
Yeah, he's still that really crazy aggressive top laner, but the fact that BDS is so well versed in playing around him really makes it a weapon, and I'm curious to see what damage he's going to do in top lane in the knockout stage, because if he even has like a second or a third gear, it's going to be really scary.
And it's not only about the damage, it's also about what champion is he going to pick also. I mean, you never know what Adam's going to do. On the other hand, we also have Vitality B, and if I look at Vitality B, Dino, they like to fight. I mean, they bring the fight to you, even if you don't want to.
You don't have a choice. Like, your back is against the wall, you are fighting. The lovely thing about Vitality B is they play like they know they're the better players on the Rift, and they are just going to go in with a skill check that you're gonna lose. That's how they play every single instance of the early game of some fights. It does leave room for mistakes. They didn't come out as the first seed in their group as the only LFL team, but at the same time, it is so scary because you never know when they're gonna hit.
And you know, if we're gonna call it, you know, the LFL Masters or something like that, maybe we could call it like, I don't know, like the Spaghetti Western Masters as well, because like, draw! That's what they do. Every time they're on the Rift, they're just there and they look at you dead in the eye and they say, I'm going to mechanically outplay you. What are you going to do about that? This team is very scary when they are just all cylinders firing mechanically.
I mean, one of these players that likes to draw, in this case, is Skeens. I want to talk about a little bit about him, because looking at this plays we just saw, all of them seem to be centered about the jungler from Vitality B.
Yeah, and back in Spring, I remember particularly Goldborg was giving his kind of nod to Vitality B as the most exciting LFL team at that tournament and potentially one of the dark horses. Of course, they ended up losing out to Karmine Corp, who went on that crazy run in Spring, but it was one of these teams where you look at Skeens as just being this powerhouse, the driving force behind this team in terms of making players on the map and putting their name up as one of the best ERL junglers.
I also want to talk about LELC. LELC was one of those teams back in Spring, Don, and we were like, this team's going to defeat Karmine Corp. Unfortunately, it didn't happen for them, but now Karmine Corp is not in the tournament. I think they're one of the heavy favorites once again.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we were just talking about Skeens in the jungle. You can't look at LDLC and not talk about, yeah, that guy has been stellar for the LDLC roster, and I think he's just ramping up along with his roster. They have never been as dominant as they were right now in the LFL, and going into EU Masters, they have one goal, and that's to win it all. And you hear in interviews, their players even say, we're probably the best team. The best team doesn't always win, but we are the best team.
Yeah, and there is no excuse this time, shall we say. If we're going to go put that kind of onus on them, there is no Carmine core here. You are definitely the pre-tournament favorite, and though we keep banding about that name, LDLC do definitely come in as favorites. They have some problems to sort out from groups. They did drop a game there, and they had some issues to work around, but make no mistake, they should be one of our favorites heading forwards.
And then the last but not the least LFL team we didn't really talk about, it's the silent kid in the class, the kid that doesn't really say anything, but it's a very smart kid. I'm talking about GameWard. We'll be seeing them play today, but GameWard seems to find these solutions how to turn games.
Yeah, and you know, might say, you know, they're the quiet kid. I'd say they're a sleeping dragon. Now, if one of them's in your classroom,
I never had a dragon in my class.
if they're in your classroom, you got other problems. But this team, they look at you and they see your win conditions better than any other LFL team. They are. I spoke to one of the LFL English casters, Middlecott, and he described them as the best thinkers in the LFL. They're a team that look at you, understand your win conditions, and play to them accordingly. Looking at these games against Dusty as well, did a really good job of just seeing what they could and couldn't do in team fights and playing accordingly.
Yeah, it's a bit scary that you have a team that can play so reserved in the LFL, because we've just been talking about BDS, about Vitality actually bringing the fight to you. But yeah, I mean, the graphics says it all. It's a French takeover.
No, it's more of a second revolution we're going to see here as they are taking over. I mean, looking at this GameWard, they're, I think, the only together with BDS Academy that went 6-0 in groups. So I kind of expect more of them. And if we look at Plains teams where GameWard comes from, they have a good chance of making it far in the tournament now.
There is a fun fact about that, because in every tournament we have had, a team has gone from play-ins to knockouts. So they get through that group stage. At least one team has done that. And in every tournament but one, they've not just done that, but they've gone past the first round of knockouts as well. Having this hyperbolic time chamber of having extra game time to be able to figure out what you're doing, understand the meta, and go forwards in the tournament has been very important. Maybe GameWard can benefit from that.
Yeah, but first they have to play today, and they're playing against X7. And I must say, the LFL 4 seed, it sounds like it's not, you know, not much, but it seems like this team is growing the further we go into this tournament.
Oh, definitely. I think GameWard, they had their hiccup at the end of the season in the LFL. They only came in as a fourth seed when they could actually probably have done better. But if you look at the names, this is like, I don't know, it's like a Prime League team, like a super team from an alternate timeline. You have a lot of big names in there, people like Czekolad that should ring a bell, and they have been figuring out their way to play on this patch. You saw him play-ins, drop a game against White Dragons, look a little bit shaky against Henk, but now they go 6-0 in groups and they look better than ever. That's actually a very scary fact, because that's exactly what Carmine Corp did last spring. Sorry.
That one.
Yeah, that one.
I mean, they did that for like 3 times in a row.
Yeah, 3 years in a row, but yeah, it was this spring.
I mean, looking at this lineup, I want to talk about Akabane as well, because Akabane was one of the, you know, the main roles for last split. He was the one that was able to, enable his team.
Yeah, I think that, you know, it's something that you've been talking about, Dino, as well, in terms of the way that I've looked at GameWard. It has been this meticulous, over kind of like mastermind kind of players, which just look to just see what you can't trade with on the map. But there is a second way they play, and that is through Akabane. Yeah,
you basically have GameWard in like it's a trusty French car, and it has 2 drive modes, right? You have the Akabane sports mode that goes on in the early game. Pixley Sin just gangstop lane, Melonik on a counter pick, try to get the dives off. And if that doesn't work, you have a cruise control called Innaxe. And Innaxe in team fights is a monster. The only thing they do is make sure you don't get to do anything on the map, play an almost killless game, and then set Innaxe up for success in the mid to late game. And it's really hard for teams in the group stage specifically to deal with when they take your pressure out of the game and play their own game. We haven't really seen a team figure it out yet.
And I think that's one of the main reasons why GameWard is the team that has the fastest game time in group stage, but also has the slowest time in group stage. And that's something we touched upon already, is because they know what to do. They're very smart. Their decision-making is just like out of this world, I would say, at some point.
Yeah, I mean, there is this kind of thing where, like, there is eventually a point in a game where they'll realize there is no way we lose if we play like this. Kind of the very chess analogy in that. That's the cruise control, right? But seeing both sides of that, the extremes, is really interesting to see, just in terms of, like, actually, yeah, it's very easy to determine when they're playing one way or the other.
Now, I do know when you put your car into sports mode, it's kind of nice to give some extra throttle. Giving some extra throttle sometimes, Dino, is like a recipe for doom.
Yeah, the problem that they have faced in the past is when they try too hard to force the place in the early game, they give room to the enemy team. Or when they take too much time of thinking about the best play and making sure that the enemy team can't really make a move on the map, then they just let the enemy team scale into the late game, and they tend to lose some of those team fights. We saw that in the playing stage against White Dragons, we saw that in that one close game against Genk. If they give too much leeway, they are prone to make a mistake.
Now, moving to the other side, to X7, they are the second seed from the NLC, but in groups, they already, they did beat LDLC. I want to mention it once again. So I've seen them being a strong team, but what do they need to do to make it work once again?
Oh, gosh. Well, I think a lot of it does come to what they're going to be doing in the early game, particularly around top lane. But honestly, outside of this a little bit more, to understand what they need to do now, you need to understand where they've come from in the first place, because they've been solving issues this entire split. In spring, they got knocked out very early into the bracket because they met LDLC very early in. Yeah. They got 3-0'd in the quarterfinals. They got dumped out despite being one of our pre-tournament favorites. Summer, they've replaced their jungler, replaced their top laner, and things don't really work so well. It takes about half a split until they decide, actually, let's bring in another jungler. Viking comes in to shore up what's happening with this team, be more of a facilitating player to make sure that the already strong lanes can play through it, and they go on a dominant streak towards the end of it. And they do this by addressing these issues time and time again. Now, they did get reverse swept in the finals. That did mean that we kind of had a bit of a road bump there. Because even though they're coming in as now a second seed, a lot of people were viewing them as the best NLC team up until that point. Now, coming into this groups, coming into quarterfinals, we need to see them again get on that track towards improving, making sure they can address some of these issues, particularly, as I said, maybe about their connection with their top laner.
If there's a way that X7 is going to do it, what do you expect? I mean, you talked about a proper game plan. Is that the only thing they can do?
Oh no, definitely what X7 has is they have that X factor in a couple of lanes. The problem for X7 mostly is getting that online consistently, and I think Viking came in clutch there. They went 22-5 or something like that, with him on the roster. Don't forget, Attila is a new addition as well to the roster, and he's very aggressive along with Kasing. So in general, I think X7 has a lot of weapons. It's just finding the right hole to punch against GameWard. That's going to be their difficulty this best of 5, basically. Yeah,
let's zoom in more into these players, because looking at the top lane, looking at Chasy, he's, I wouldn't say a coin flipper, but it is what it is.
No, what he is someone that loves to leverage lane advantage in the way that we've seen someone like Adam from BDS Academy do as well. Chasy is an incredible individual laner, but no lane exists truly in isolation nowadays. Even if you talk about top lane as an island, if you do make mistakes where your jungler is active somewhere else on the map, you can get punished. And against LDLC, he was punished. He had a very poor game. It started with one gank, and then suddenly he was behind in the matchup. You can leverage that, man. He was behind in team fights, and it started snowballing against him. Chasy is a very good litmus test for X7. If you see his KDA and it's like 0-3, X7 are probably going to lose that game. But you see in games like this against AGO Rogue as well in the group stage, he pops off, and as soon as he has an advantage, game goes the other way for them.
So you kind of need to put him on an island, but make sure that he's safe on his island.
Yes, you need to isolate the island properly.
Actually, make sure that the enemy jungler can't get a rowboat and get over there when you're making plays on the map. The beautiful thing about Chasy is that he has had this issue for a while, but it's getting better. Like, if you looked at him at Challenger Korea, where he played for Spear, that became Awesome Spear, and then he played for Damwon Kia Academy, actually, with Malrang. He had that mistakes. He had the same mistakes where he overextends in the lane a bit, trying to look for an outplay, because that's what he likes to do. But if he polishes it in the best of 5s, then he's actually a very, very strong top laner. That might be a very big problem for GameWard.
So it's kind of up to him to not lose his lane. That's basically what I'm getting here.
Yeah, or rather, like, don't give those openings for someone else to lose your lane for you. Where it's like, oh, I'm going to push in for this 1v1 trade. It's like, actually, jungler's here, kind of whatever at that point.
Now, I do want to look at the other side of the map, which is bot lane. I mean, that 2v2 is going to be insane. You have Attila and Kasing, you have Innaxe and kamilius. We have very experienced players playing against each other here.
Yeah, and for me, while we can talk about individual players in isolation, this is where the butting of heads is going to be so important, because you have strengths in like roles in this bot lane, in the 2v2. This arm wrestle in the bot lane is going to be a big determining factor in the series.
Yeah, with the big difference that in the stats, you can see, wait, they share a pentakill in this tournament. That's great. But if you look at the damage per minute, Attila gets way more resources to play with, but he has to dish out that damage. Well, for GameWard, they are completely fine with playing the top side of the map and just letting them scale into the mid to late game. So for GameWard, it's more like they have a very deep champion pool. They want to try to catch the blow that Attila is going to deliver. And if Attila doesn't really get a lead, then GameWard comes out to play.
Yeah, and I heard this Attila rule from Aatrox that after 26 minutes, if he has 3 items, the game is going to be won by Attila.
Both of these vehicles have a cruise control.
Now, we are pretty close to pick and ban. I want to get into the predictions now really fast, actually. Dinah, I'm going to start with you. What are your expectations for tonight?
I mean, it's a real toss-up. I mean, the LFL looks really strong. The NLC comes in as the biggest challenger.
Okay, first, give me the score.
I'm going to go for a 3-2 for GameWard. And the only reason for that being is I hope it goes 5-game because I think these teams are not consistent enough to do a 3-0 stomp. But I think having different playstyles, different drive modes will get GameWard over the finish line.
Little spoiler on that little thing at the bottom there. I'm on X7 side. I think it should go to 5 games as well. I think it should go to X7 though. I think this is a close matchup. I hope it's a close matchup. We didn't get any 5-game series in spring. I think we get one today.
Hopefully we get there. As we move on to our casters of the day, it's going to be Hip, Rain, and Trouble, who are going to bring us all the action.
Thank you very much, guys. Hello and welcome to the caster desk as we're getting a kick-off quarters here at the EU Masters 2022 Summer. I'm Hip Rain. Obviously, this is Trouble. Trouble, we are about to get X7 versus GameWard, the LFL versus NLC.
LFL versus NLC. You say something that we saw over in the quarterfinals in spring 2022, something that X7 want to very easily forget because LDLC knocked them out of the quarterfinals when they were at the same stage. So, yeah, I think it's revenge time, baby.
It is revenge time. It's also time for the NLC to kind of prove why we got that 3rd seed. We won't talk about what happened to it, but at least 2 of our seeds.
Where the 3rd seed at?
They're gone. No, we don't talk about it. But, you know, like, we got 2 teams, NLC, into the playoffs. You know, it's a hard road, though. There are 4 LFL teams in playoffs, and one of them, this is the 4th seed from the LFL GameWard.
And X7 have got all 3 on their side of the bracket.
Yeah, it's a long and hard road for them to trudge. Let's see if they can get over this first obstacle. I think the desk are right. I'm expecting this to be a 5-game day. I'm gonna favoritism lean towards X7 on this one, just because, you know, they are our homeboys. But at the same time, I think GameWard are terrifyingly strong. As we are into picks and bans already, the Lucian has been taken away. I'm expecting to see quite a lot of attention go towards that bot side. Yeah. When you got Innaxe and Attila in a game, you know bot lane is going to be heavily prioritized. There goes Kalista.
And the funny thing is that usually we have Attila pretty linked up to the likes of Ezreal's, Dravens, but he hasn't picked up that Draven much, especially into the groups, and neither did he pick it over in the finals of the NLC where they played 5 games. He played 4 games of Zeri, 1 game of Sivir, and I think if anything, this game might be a handshake of the Sivir versus Ahri because you're either going to ban both AD carries right here and then you've got the likes of Lulu and Yuumi going out unbanned, or you're going to ban the 2 enchanters and leave out those 2 AD carries. But it's not going to be the case because GameWard are more scared of Vikings Javan, which to me screams that they want to go towards something like an Aphelios maybe or a Sivir.
Yeah, that's quite interesting actually, because I was expecting more bot lane stuff, but like I said, Viking's been quite a powerful like pickup for X7. There's been a massive shift in their like overall power since he joined this roster. So it makes sense that you do put focus on something which he can take over the map early on, because that's Viking's style. Ooh. He gets on the map and he takes it over early. But there we go. We're going to see the Nautilus as the final ban here from the side of X7.
I think right here you pick the Yuumi and then you stick it on whatever you want for Innaxe, right? They played such an insane game versus who was it, Matchko if I'm not wrong, where Innaxe was on that Zeri, there was a Yuumi on Kamilius, and they completely 1v9'd this entire game. But then again, I think the Javan band kind of screamed, we want to play any mobile AD carry that could get caught by a Cataclysm, so the Sivir has been locked in. X7 have the chance right here to lock the infamous Zeri with Yuumi or Zeri with Lulu.
I feel like, yeah, this is just going to be a Zeri Yuumi rotation for X7. I mean, they technically don't have to pick up the Zeri. Ooh. They're going to go for the Ahri for Tempt. Now, there is a world where you could see the Zeri get flexed into another role here from GameWard, but I very much doubt they're going to do that. We're not seeing the Zeri mids as common as we were earlier on in the year. So GameWard now are probably going to take the Lulu, otherwise it's just going to get banned out. Put something that's quite comfortable here in the bot lane. Maybe a Vi lock-in, actually, for Akabane as well, just because they expect the Zeri to come forward. You're going to be able to lock Attila down down on that and deny him from actually being able to kind of really out-kite in the fights. But I'm thinking this is probably just going to be the Vi and the Lulu pick up here for GameWard, unless they have something else prepared in that support role.
I think it's very important to take away the Vi as well, because she pairs up so well with the Ahri. So right here, if X7 wanted to sack completely their AD carry, they can go towards Draven, Jhin, Ezreal, whatever they want with the Yuumi pretty much, and say you can ban the Zeri away and then lock in that Vi together with the Ahri. That is a Czekolad special, especially since GameWard is a very bot-centric team. They do like to pick mid laners that either will control the team fights or will have early on skirmishing power like the Ahri, and here the Swain for the later on team fights. And actually X7, there you go, they pivoted off the Zeri, which is something we don't see very often when it's open and Attila is in this team, but it's gonna be the Tom and Jerry down bot.
I mean, you still have the same problem. Vi can just point and click you and lock you down, and then the Swain can jump in. But it's going to really be, it's going to be a lot harder here for GameWard when you've got the invisibility, you've got, you know, they're both just popping out of nowhere, final chaptering, spraying and praying you down in that just straight line, and will absolutely obliterate a team. And there's already a lot of kind of disruptive team fighting from X7, with the Ahri dashing around the edges. GameWard, I think it looks a little bit more kind of straightforward and you know, kind of by the books as a team fighting comp they're locking in, and we know GameWard like to play these kind of team fight centric comps, so expectations are we'll probably see, you know, a little bit more of a round of that kind of going down. And as X7, they're just going to ban away these enchanters. They're going to take off the Lulu. The Trundle's been banned away as well. See what the next ban's going to be.
Of course it's going to be the Renata. This is the only other enchanter that remains that works so well into the Twitch. Twitch opens with spray and pray. You put down this hostile takeover. You start spraying down your entire team. This goes really south. But very key, 2 of Viking's junglers have been banned out. So what does he have left right here? Because usually he would pull something like the Rek'Sai out if he's feeling very confident. But right here, I think X7 really need that front line for themselves. So even maybe something like a Sejuani could pop up out of nowhere. Chasy has been playing a lot of Sejuani up in the top lane as well. So maybe picking it away now that you know that Trundle is no longer something that can nullify that Sejuani would be good. Oh, they're gonna blind pick the Aatrox instead.
Chasy's been loving the Aatrox so far during the tournament. He's been very heavily leaning on these carry top laners as well. Not really been playing too many tanks. I think in groups, like Ornn was the only tank he played and he lost on it. So he's only really been playing these very aggressive top laners. As we're going a little bit zoomed in there. We'll see what the next. Oh, a Amumu getting picked up. That is scary now for X7. There's a lot of crowd control. There's a lot of space that can be bought by GameWard. And the question for me is, what can X7 actually pick up now to kind of round out this comp? Because GameWard, you know, we're going to be looking now towards that mid or top laner for them. We'll see what they actually go for here. They're going to go for the Akali. So Swain fairly flexible. So is the Akali, actually.
I just really love the fact that they locked in Amumu here, because X7 does not have any tanky member. The second 1Q hits from a kamilius, everyone goes in, that member's dead. It's suddenly a 4 versus 5. What have you got from the side of X7? Let's see what they're going to choose to bring out from the jungle, because again, something maybe like a Sejuani, you need something to be able to face check into that Amumu to take that first hit, because there's so much damage coming in from the Akali, the Swain, the Vi, the Sivir, and it is going to be the case. Having these 3 seconds, you know, when you're so durable with that Sejuani in the jungle, are going to prove to be so valuable to actually get into this river if you've been forced out from GameWard.
All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the overall comps now that everything's locked in. Let's start with X7. What is the game plan here? How does this play out? What we're expecting to see?
So usually, even for both teams, they have a very similar play style. They do play for their bot lanes and they do play for the team fights. And from what you can see right here, there is this side towards the bot side, from jungle to bot, where it's like the front to back. You've got the Swain to cover for GameWard, you've got the Ahri and the Sejuani to cover from X7, and then you've got the typical hyper carries towards the bot side of the map. The top side of the map is a different story, because you've got 2 snowbally champions, the sides of Aatrox and Akali. They both scale really, really, really well, and if you let Aatrox run free with the Yuumi in the late game, he's going to run over your entire team. And as you saw, GameWard, they're not necessarily too tanky. So if Vi overextends, if the Amumu overextends, and Aatrox is strong from a side lane, it's going to be really difficult to deal with. But to get there, you have to get through that early game, and level 6 on that Akali is going to be really hard to deal with.
It's one of those things that you kind of forget about when you have a Yuumi, and it's one of those things where like you just go, right, what AD carry does Yuumi want to sit on? Actually, it's not always the case. She can go on, you know, if you've got a carry jungler or like an aggressive top lane, like a bruiser top lane like Aatrox, he has so much inbuilt sustain, but then that adding extra sustain and that adding extra kind of like slows and crowd controls that Yuumi brings for him just makes him so much stronger. But we are now on to the Rift for our first of our quarterfinals here at the EU Masters. It's going to be GameWard taking on X7. I am hoping we are going to get a full 5-game series. And remember, guys, don't forget to claim your August/September League of Legends monthly capsules, all for you Prime shoppers out there. You got RP, Mythic Essence, skins, and more. So make sure you do get that all sorted for yourself. But here we go, game number 1.
Right, so we mentioned how it's going to be pretty much chaos on the top side of the map if the Akali starts getting kills, if the Aatrox starts getting kills. And as you can see here, Chasy is opting to go towards the Comet as well. He's playing more of a pokey build, as Melonik has chosen to go for that second wind. When you get poke, you start healing. But reminder here, second wind is slightly nerfed on this patch. So when you get hit by Comet, when you get hit by Scourge from the Aatrox, who has really long range abilities, you're going to suffer that poke. But of course, after level 6, Melonik will have that kill threat potential, especially because he's running the Ignite. He can lower down that healing coming from the World Ender from the Aatrox. Now, where the teams are going to choose to focus, for me, I'm thinking that top side. You get Melonik on his Akali really fed. He can dive into the backline. He can kill the Twitch 1 versus 1. He can kill the Ahri 1 versus 1. Earlier on, though, it's probably going to be, I'm sorry, a little bit of a slower game. This is a best of 5, guys. When we're walking into quarterfinals and it's a best of 5, usually game 1 is a little bit of a test as well. You're testing the waters. You've seen how willing your opponent is to go the extra mile, to play a little bit more aggressive. And also, if you make a mistake, then you're carrying it on for the rest of that best of series, the what-ifs that we're talking about. So usually, it's more of a slower game for both GameWard and X7, since they both love teamfighting that late game.
Yeah, they're both two teams that do like to sit back and kind of just relax, catch some farm, kind of get those 2-3 items on their AD carries and then look to fight. But there is that world where Akabane on the Vi, if GameWard are playing aggressive and they're playing fast and he's ahead, he is the person who dictates that speed for the team. So keep your eye on this Vi and see what they're looking to do. So far, starting on their blue side, clearing downwards, and will be on that bottom side of the map. But same for Viking, who's done 2 camps and immediately started to rotate towards the bottom side of the map. So expect to see both of these junglers showing up into some early action. As cutting over to mid lane, Tempt and Czekolad actually, both half HP, so being a fairly aggressive lane where they've just been trading with each other as much as possible.
And for these two teams, this quarterfinal means a lot. For GameWard, they're coming in as the 4th seed of the LFL. They were doing pretty fine over a regular season. They were 2nd, but then they flopped in the playoffs, and so did X7. X7 were looking very strong over in the regular split. We thought they were going to take the crown again from Spring, but it wasn't the case. They got reverse swept in the finals by Dusty. And right here, they're looking to reclaim that glory from Spring. Actually, LDLC was the one that knocked them out in 2022 Spring, and now GameWard, another LFL team that they have to face over in the quarterfinals. But it doesn't end there, Heatbrain, because if X7 do make it through this particular LFL team, they're going to have to face, either LFL Seed 2 or LFL Seed number 3 in the semifinals.
Yeah,
so
if they
the
can make it
LFL
through
teams,
here,
they're never ending.
It is a gauntlet of France for the side of X7 if they're going to make it through today's action. This matchup is one we've been very excited for because, like you're saying, they're both teams who kind of failed and fumbled during playoffs. You know, X7 should have 3-0'd their domestic finals at NLC, but they just threw game 3 and then it snowballed from there. And, you know, it was an element of them being a little bit too cocky versus Dusty. Dusty got wind in their sails and kind of carried that momentum forwards. And GameWard are also another team who are a little bit guilty of getting cocky, maybe resting on their laurels a little bit, getting punished for it. So both these teams, you know, made mistakes on the tail end of their season domestically, and they really want to come back and prove that they are better than 2nd and 4th in their region.
And last time Czekolad also played Swain, it was against Dusty, another NLC team, and he actually solo killed the mid laner on the Swain. So he's very familiar with the matchup here. Swain into the Ahri. He forced the early teleport from Tempt and kept his, getting that quick recall right there. And let's see where these junglers are going to choose to go first, right? Because Vi is looking for that level 6. He's looking to pin someone down with the ultimate and then have the follow-up come through. But so is Sejuani, right? He's looking for that long-range ult to pin someone down and then go all in. And I feel like this is most likely going to happen towards that bot side of the map where you do have the dragon, because both of these teams love their priority bottom lanes, especially when they have hyper carries, which means they do love the early dragons for that. I'm
glad you mentioned that, actually, because when you look at the statistics, it's very interesting. Both these teams have very high dragon presence in the game. So, GameWard have 72% of the dragons taken in their games are taken by them. On the side of X7, they're 77%. But the difference is X7 consistently take that first dragon, while GameWard only get 50% of their dragons early. So X7, while both these teams do play for their bot side, X7 really lean into their bot side early on in the game to enable some map pressure for themselves so they can kind of snowball the game from there.
And that was very clever by the X7 bot lane right there. They had a ward on that third bush. The second they saw, they forced basically GameWard's bot lane to stay around. But look, there's Viking on the side as well. He's possibly looking for a big shove, but because the wave is too large, you can't necessarily force a dive. Czekolad is also level 6. He was hovering towards that bot side of the map. Tempt still level 5, not teleport to join that fight. So they're just taking their waves, they're farming the back and forth. This is the nature of a best of 5. You're testing the waters in that first game. How far is your opponent willing to go? How far are you willing to go for these early game advantages? And especially when you're scaling that much into the late game for both of these teams, you don't necessarily care too much about pressuring that early game advantage, because if something gets out of control, it'll be really difficult to shut down.
Yeah, absolutely. Viking is still behind Akabane as well. He's only just about to tick over to that level 5 mark there, so has got a bit of a ways to go. Akabane, you know, already had that level 5, working towards that level 6 mark for himself. Is a little bit further up over his counterpart, but actually Viking, as I just look at the experience, was able to bounce back as he just took his entire bot side. So he's fine. Kamilius coming on a long flank here, but spotted out by that control ward means that he should be safe as Tempt dodges away on the claw.
And here's what Tempt's gonna have to be very respectful of. Every single time that bot lane resets, you know that Yuumi is gonna go together with Twitch. So the Yuumi is gonna end up in the bot lane, but Amumu can actually roam the map and possibly try to get you kills or summons in the early game. So Tempt is going to have to be extremely respectful from Kamilius, for Kamilius' roams right here. You see, he's still sticking around. Maybe if you get that Ahri ult, that's then your ticket to walk into that dragon pit and get that very early dragon if Tempt doesn't have his ultimate up and available. Because, yes, Yuumi is a very broken champion and very hated for that reason, but early on in the laning phase, you're usually not that powerful, and then also you cannot roam necessarily too much unless you stick on the jungler, right? So Kamilius right here has the upper hand if he wants to make something happen very early on.
Yeah, well, both of these champions are very good in a team fight, the Amumu and the Yuumi. The Yuumi is entirely utility for these bigger fights and these skirmishes where, you know, you have a bit of crowd control, you have that roaming potential, you know, you have a lot more early presence as that Amumu. But for now, we are going to see GameWard just get shoved in underneath their tower somewhat, but not really too much of me taken in that time. Akabane has level 6 and is making their way up towards the mid lane. Tempt trying to get away for the moment as Akabane charging up the queue, not going to come over the wall. And they actually do have their support in Kamilius roaming around as well as Viking, constantly trying to look out to spot where Kamilius is.
Actually, I think Viking has gotten there unspotted. Now he's going to be spotted, of course, by the control ward, but Innaxe is all alone towards the bot of the map. Viking is taking his red, and, sorry, Akabane is taking his red, but Viking might be spotted here. He will definitely get spotted right here, but the objective that X7 came for was to take that plate. Viking might have to flash.
Viking's in trouble. He's going to have to blow it down. Throws onto Innaxe, but he can't get over the wall in time. First blood to Akabane.
That was very beautifully done. Viking oversteps his welcome on the map, and Czekolad.
Oh, Tempt has to flash away, still holding that ult a little bit longer. He's going to chase in, and Czekolad finds the solo kill onto Tempt.
Yet again, last time we saw Czekolad on the Swain, it was against NLC's Dusty. He solo killed Backland on the Ahri. He solo kills Tempt on the Ahri as well. He knows the matchup so freaking well. And again, Viking here, he's overextending. He does not expect Akabane to be towards that bot side of the map. And we mentioned, if Amumu hits that Q, you've got so much CC together with the second Q. And lovely stuff right there from Akabane. Instantly chains up the ultimate as well to not allow Viking to flash through the wall. Beautiful chain also from Czekolad. Chases Tempt underneath his tower, who didn't have another charge of the ult.
Yeah, that was really, really clean stuff there from Czekolad, actually. Solo killing Tempt on, you know, a pick which he's actually been playing quite a lot during the group stages of this tournament. And X7 off to a rough start here, now down 1,000 gold, but they are looking to try and pull that back somewhat as Melonik jumps over the wall. Chasy does chase him, but not going to commit for anything more as X7 actually lost their first dragon of their game, and they are going to now turn their attention towards this Rift Herald as they've got some presence over here. And with Akabane no ultimate available, neither for Czekolad, this should be pretty much a surefire one as they're using the big old combo onto the Swain. Attila finds himself the kill. Beautiful pick up there. Rift Herald as well for X7, and they bounce back after that kind of series of misplays earlier.
That is usually a move that GameWard does. They will rotate into the mid lane, their bot lane, and they'll go for the Rift Herald, but this time it is X7 because they know they have the ultimate advantage. But Innaxe on the bot lane has been shoving in two waves, sorry. Attila needs to be very careful before he approaches.
Oh no, he's in trouble. Instant flashes out. Sivir ult goes down as well, but not going to get caught, just going to lose a whole lot of this wave. Vikings here now with that ultimate available, so Attila will catch this wave, but not before giving up a few plays. Let's have a look at this mid lane, though.
Yeah, that was very well done. They were actually pinged on the map. Czekolad knew that Kasing and Attila were over there. He overextends, doesn't have ultimate or flash from the previous engage with Tempt in the mid lane. So, a little bit questionable right there, especially since Attila did come from Vision together with the Yuumi. But that was a mistake that was instantly capitalized upon from the side of X7, but the bot lane did lose a bunch of gold from that bot lane since they lost a bunch of plates, experience and gold from all the waves that got crashed in underneath Attila's tower while he was still in the mid lane. But now they do have the Rift Herald in their pockets, so they can actually look to cash in even more on the rat. And
crucially, the gold between the AD carries is dead even. No one has a gold lead, but there is a Blade the Ruined King finished up onto Attila. Innaxe is heading back to base and should get close, if not finish up, but not quite there. But if we do look at full items right now, it is only Attila and Akabane who's got that Chemtech Chainsword finished up on the Vi. So gonna make Chasy's life a little bit harder. You talked about the Ignite, but this is, you know, at least not on a cooldown. You will just be able to apply those grievous wounds to him. And obviously with the Yuumi about as well, kind of denying a bit more of that sustain as X7 are fishing around for something bot side.
Yeah, and that item is actually very gold efficient as well. Something along the lines of more than 100% efficient, minus the passive even. So adding the passive, which is the Grievous Wounds right there, it's not the top of the top Grievous Wounds, but it's good enough for that, especially early game. But mind you, very nice flash right there from Innaxe instantly to not get caught. But mind you, that means that Vi, yes, he's very strong, deals damage, but he's also very squishy. So if he does get caught out by a Viking ult, by Tempt's charm, by an ultimate from Kasing's Yuumi, could end up going down real quick.
That was a really nice play there by the side of X7, just because Attila burnt his flash earlier when that potential dive went down. So now actually burning Innaxe's in response kind of equalizes out the score somewhat on that front. And right now the gold lead is still 1,000 in favor of GameWard, and it's really anybody's kind of tempo to take, I guess. You know, it's only 1,000 gold lead. That gold lead is also spread very evenly across a lot of their members. The biggest gold lead in the game right now is Czekolad with 500 gold up over Tempt, so nothing major for either team, but he has now finished up his Crystal Scepter. The Kraken Slayer has been finished up for Innaxe as well, so items are starting to roll over. People are starting to hit their kind of first items, and we'll see what that's going to actually do for the state of the game here.
I think it's so important that the Rylai's is completed on the side of Czekolad, because he can actually be that Ray boss in the choke points right now, where X7 don't necessarily have many items completed. No item completed in the jungle, no item completed in the, on this Ahri, which means that the Ahri will not be that easy to pop you, even though it's full squishes on the side of GameWard, right? So having Czekolad with his Rylai's, very tanky, slowing people down through choke points, it's going to be very important. Since 30 seconds, we've got another dragon coming. Very nice tempo play right there from Viking as well. He's going to drop the Rift Herald in the mid lane. GameWard are going to have to respond to that, and they can move into the river from the side of X7, but that is...
not moving. That's not moving, Trouble. It's just gone. Tempt able to dodge away on that first claw, makes it the second as well. Viking flashes away. They throw all of the CC onto Kamilius. He has to use the stoppage for the moment. They're going to chase onto the rat for the moment. Akabane holding his life for as long as possible, but no, Attila, it's going to go down. And Viking is on his own. Only got a kitty cat with him. And it is a whitewash for the side of GameWard. Maybe a hero play can come down, but the charm doesn't quite connect. They get the lockdown onto Chasy as well. And GameWard, they're going to pick up this second dragon for free.
And GameWard seem a lot more decisive when they want to make a move. If they want to engage, they engage. X7 seem to be on a completely different page. Ahri is going out from the sort of Tempt, while Chasy is tipping in, but then Viking flashes away when they've already caught an Amumu. And you see how we said Viking on this Sejuani is going to be the face check. But why are you flashing away? You actually got a pretty good ultimate onto kamilius' Amumu. You need to stand in front of your Twitch to beat that rock block and wall in front of your hyper carry, especially since Attila does not have that ultimate. So being stuck on the ramp right there, with Czekolad actually stopping any entry from mid lane as well with his ultimate.
Yeah.
Really good stuff right there from GameWard, stopping the indecisiveness, I would say, right there from X7.
Well, as soon as Viking's ult hit Kamilius, Akabane was like, it's easy. I can just press R on the rat and take Attila out of the game. And without any frontline, with the fact that the cat disconnected as well, Attila was just easy pickings. And now has got his flash, but hasn't got his cleanse. Swain's going to shove into Innaxe. Innaxe is a Sivir, though, so that's going to be dealt with fairly quickly. And this tri-brush is just Kamilius's and Akabane's. They just live here. They absolutely adore sitting in this bush. It's all about just sitting for the pot lane. And yeah, we are taking notes right now. Attila, what can he do? Is he just going to have to play this chill? But they're going to spot him out on the wall.
No. If Attila gets out of invis right here, he's in he's going to be in really bad hands, the hands of Akabane, which is not going to be a very fun road, but Viking is going to be around. Now, of course, there are ultimates all across the board. Attila does have his flash available, but you do not have the first dips from the mid lane. Czekolad is always the first one to move from that mid lane into the river. X7 might still look. It's actually Tempt this time.
Oh, a massive whiff on the ultimate, but the charm's going to be enough to kill Kamilius as Attila is untouched this time. They're jumping in for Tempt. Tempt can't get away. Tempt's going down. Kasing's going to be next to follow as well as Czekolad slowing down Viking, leaving Attila on his lonesome against the tower as Attila's just holding fast and long. Akabane finds him with the Q. Attila flashes, finds himself a return kill, but Innaxe will take him out. 4 members of X7 fall.
3, 0, and 5 for Innaxe Sivir, and this is why they prioritized it over any other AD carry that was left available. Zeri was up for grabs, FLICKR was up for grabs, Innaxe chose Sivir. They banned the Java for that reason. They picked the Sivir, and every single time there's an engage coming in from GameWard, Innaxe completely untouched on that backline. And again, X7, who we've been praising a lot for the team fight in Chasy.
Chasy's probably just going to be killed here. Kamilius is chasing him down. Maybe if he can land that Q, he might be able to survive. Can't quite get the damage off for the moment from Chasy, but now he sees Melonik will come forward as his kill is secured by his support. But a beautiful play on the top side here, and GameWard now 10-3 in the kill score. And we'll have a look at this fight in the bot side once again.
Yeah, Viking sees kamilius right there. He knows he has no ulti, but he does, flash, but he does whiff the ultimate completely. And as you can see, Kasing is ulting in the wrong direction whilst everyone is coming from the top side of the river. Kasing is ulting towards that dragon pit. So GameWard find out the best way to shove X7 into a very narrow choke point. This is where Sivir and her ricochets completely shine. And even though Attila tries his hardest to get a kill back, and he does manage to do so, that Sivir right now is 2,000 gold in the lead. 2 items in, got the boots, gonna cash in on the cull as well. That is a very rich AD carry, and when we're talking about the story of the 2 AD carries, right? Innaxe in the LEC, played for Schalke. Attila has been to Worlds, has taken down AD carries like Uzi in his career. This is why these 2 teams are so bot-centric.
Oh, another flash comes out. They are continuing to beat the pressure up onto Kamilius. Attila's able to take him down. That's going to help because Attila is 2 levels down on Innaxe right now.
Yeah, that sucks. I mean, Innaxe did receive a bunch of star platings from
he's also just had a jungle of bot lane all game as well, so he's been pretty safe while Attila...
You telling me this is a jungle diffy here, Hitbrain?
I'm not going to say it's a diffy in the jiffy, but, you know, there has been a little bit of attention from Akabane. And this is the thing about the Vi, is the Vi entered into the meta because it was picked up as a way to counter Zeri, but Vi still does exactly the same job even if it's not a Zeri. You pick the AD carry and you just CC them and you will follow them no matter where they go and you're able to take them out. So this is why this champ has been kind of showing up more and more, and you know, they expected this to be into Attila Zeri, but it works just the same in Twitch.
I'm gonna be honest with you, it gets worse.
Yeah.
I think your biggest concern is not the Sivir or the Vi or the Swain, to be honest. I think it's Melonik's Akali, who has been farming a storm on the top side of the map. He's got his Rift Maker completed, and who stops that Akali when she manages to find a way into the backline, which is now much easier, because if Akabane presses R onto Attila, then very instantly Melonik can jump onto the back and assassinate the rat with his jungler. So it becomes really difficult because you don't have a point-click stun or any type of CC to lock down that Akali from just completely demolishing that backline. So the second Melonik starts joining the fights, the second he starts finding these flanks and these opportunities to get onto Attila, the team fights are going to get much more difficult for X7, and Kasing might have to actually jump ship and get onto Chasy to see who can kill the backline faster here.
Well, I think we're going to see a lot of this game kind of just slow down. It's very much in the tempo of GameWard, and they're a team that don't normally overreach or overextend, especially in this first game of a best-of-5 here. They're going to be playing relatively calm. But Chasy, he's overextended. He's flashed, but there's the constant CC, the constant slows. I mean, there is nowhere for him to go. And Akabane able to take him down. This will be the last outer turret crumbling here as X7 just losing way too much here in this game one. Getting punished heavily by GameWard, who just have a fantastic read on the current state of the map.
And again, that's a little bit of a whoopsie for Chasy as well. Your bot lane is backing. They're all the way back in the fountain. You're not allowed to be halfway past your top lane because you're literally the only lane that can get ganked at this particular moment, and you cannot overexpose yourself like this. Give yet another kill away to Akabane, who now is looking towards his mythic item. Is going to be most likely the Crossfire.
They're looking for Attila, but Attila has found himself caught. Kamilius on the flank as Innaxe is able to take him down. Tempt finds an assassination off, but no, he is going to go down. And this fight has gone so wrong, so quick. Chasy gets the cat on him, but he's got to somehow 1 versus 4. He can't survive, and it's a triple kill over to Melonik. Kasing will be going down. An ace for the side of GameWard as they just slam X7.
So decisive yet again from GameWard. It's actually X7 who have been looking over and over again with that Twitch Yuumi in the mid, and whoever overextends, they instantly jump on them. But Akabane does not blink at all. The second the Twitch opens fire onto this Vi, Akabane says, in your face. He'll cue the rat, stun him in place, and then hourglass every single bit of damage that's coming through. And kamilius with a lovely flank as well keeps Twitch in place. The rest of GameWard arrive, and it's a absolute bloodbath. Yes, Chasy has the Yuumi on him here, and yes, potentially we could be talking about a different story if he had his ultimate, but without the ultimate, without that heal, and without the extra stats, it's really difficult to 1v5.
Yeah, I mean, he was too late to the party. Kamilius, that flank was just beautiful because Attila, had nowhere to go. He didn't have his cat on him. He didn't have Kasing with him, and it was just easy pickings. And it was actually Innaxe with a ricochet to take him down as well. So Attila did get him back though, or I can't remember who he killed there, but he got someone back because he got him with the poison. But even so, that was a play started by X7, and you're starting to see maybe a little bit of desperation coming out. They're playing for these over-eager engages just to try and find a pick, but GameWard are just so on it. They can read this play coming a mile off, and they instantly punish with it.
I think for X7, you kind of have to at this point. You're 8,000 gold behind. If you play the front to back into a Swain, into an Akali, into a Sivir, yes, you might kill one of them, but the rest of them will wipe you out of the picture completely. Yeah. So it becomes really difficult. Attila is looking again, but GameWard right now have read this play. You see Akabane is even charging.
Oh, they look to find Akabane. He jumps straight in with the ultimate. The charm's going to connect. Attila has to flash away. They're not even able to find the kill. What a lockdown. What a slaughter. A triple kill over to Innaxe, and it is just another absolute decimation of a team fight from the LFL 4th seed.
Not a single member dies from the side of GameWard. They want to take away 5 lives from X7. They're going to take their mid lane tier 2, and they're going to sprint it down to Baron as well, so they can make sure that on the next fight, if they do ace them again, it's going to be game over. And look at this again. It's the same exact move from Attila, 3rd, 4th time in a row. GameWard have read this play. Akabane is literally charging in his face, and the second they find him, they jump into the backline, and it's like, fine, you're almost taking down our Vi. Czekolad flashes in with that Swain ult. There's so many ricochets jumping from one to another, and Melonik is just having the best time of his life. There's no CC on that Akali.
It didn't make an overall massive difference to the fight, but Akabane, when he re-entered the fight, caught Kasing mid-jump and actually stopped him from reconnecting, so at least everybody survived. Just to add insult to injury, that fight was done no matter what, but it was a cool little kind of end flare.
Make it a little bit worse, you know?
Yeah, and speaking of flares...
Oh, get the mental edge.
Yeah?
Yeah. You know how you get the mental edge?
Yeah.
You find the Yuumi whilst it's jumping from one side to another with a Q, that's very fancy. And 2, you stick a Magice in your build.
Yes, that's what I was about to say. They've got 22 stacks on Czekolad. He is stacking up his book right now. I thought they were going for the play again. I really feel like they're just like constantly trying it and hoping that one time it
I'm
will
not gonna
stick.
lie, I think it is the only play. You need to use that Twitch to actually try to find a pick and get it to become a 4 versus 5. But GameWard are bundled up as 4 the entire time. Melonik has so much mobility to get out of the Twitch or even assassinate him, right? So they definitely don't want to be going towards that Akali. But the rest of GameWard are always sticking together as 4, so it's really difficult for Attila to find an opening. I think X7 will have to fight this one.
Oh, they're looking in for the charm. They find the knockup. Czekolad instantly uses the stopwatch. The final chapter's not going to knock anybody down. As Czekolad is shut down by Attila, but he's half health already. And it's a 1 for 2 in favor as here comes Melonik. Finds himself the flip. Kasing, maybe he can get to Tempt. No, he can't. The charm connects by Tempt. The laser beam comes down as Tempt maybe can find a little bit of additional damage off. Can't quite connect it. Can't quite finish off Melonik. And the inhibitor will be destroyed here by GameWard. They may even continue to pressure to try and end this game. They've got the teleports, like you said. They're going to be bringing them in. They're going to be looking to close this game number 1 versus X7 as Melonik will come in with a shuriken flip on the Tempt. Tempt finds himself a shutdown. And maybe he's held on. They can't end.
Viking is up in 2 seconds. They can't end. Chasy in 7. So the fact that Melonik actually dies there, that means less wave clear, less damage onto these towers. And let's see this again because Tempt finds a really nice charm onto Czekolad. But Czekolad has an ult, he has his hourglass. He's a pretty beefy Swain at this point, who's also tanking the tower. So yeah, okay, you get 2, but what did we say? When that Akali suddenly joins the fight, and Akali that's uber fed right now, you're gonna end up going down. And even though the charm did hit, Melonik managed to stop that right before he died. And 2.5 items onto this Akali at this point. You've got 3 items on your Vi, plus that GA. Right here, Akabane, all he has to do is just find Attila, find that Twitch, press that button, don't care if you die, because all your team is just gonna follow through, and that Twitch is just gonna die on the spot.
Oh no, Viking. He's just able to slide out of there. This is Dragon Soul as well. We haven't really talked about this, but yeah. GW are just controlling the Dragons. They are onto their 4th, and they should be able to pick this one up. It's going to be pretty hard for X7 to contest it with the gold lead being 13,000 with the amount of crowd control they have as Attila is looking for it, but there is that pink ward. They spotted him out and everything's thrown down. Attila, not long for the world, unfortunately, taken down by Czekolad as Tempt jumps in and Tempt is locked down. That's going to be a kill for the Vi as Innaxe will fall. Viking not able to contest it, not able to kill Innaxe. Innaxe able to hold his life, and a 4 for 1 fight. 4 for none fight, actually, in favor of GW. This is going to be game number 1 over to the LFL first seed as Akabane has found himself Chasy. Chasy is going to try and 1v1 him, but I doubt he's going to be able to do anything here. It's a delayed ace, but it is a victory nonetheless for GameWard in our first game of the day.
And the LFL in the quarterfinals claim that first game versus the NOC, the rivalry got born back in 2021 with BDXL back then, and Common Corp still lives, but the LFL is still superior to this, well, game, I would say.
This game, yeah, let's not get ahead of ourselves, yeah.
It's a best of 5, and honestly, I would like to say that this is first game jitters, maybe from the set of X7, because GameWard showed up and showed off. They showed the exact same game that we've been seeing before. We've seen that the second they sort of like scan the map, they know that they can play very slow, calculated, and they instantly just will grab one mistake and slowly start raising the gold lead through there. They don't overextend. They don't play way too aggressive. They just take what is given to them. And honestly, I gotta give props to Akabane because she completely demolished the entire map with that eye.
To me, it felt that game was very much a, it was just, there was a very clear game plan for GameWard there, and they just executed on that. It felt like X7, they tried something and they were caught off on it. It's only game 1 of best of 5, so we'll see what they have coming into this next game. But for us, it's time for us to pass it back over to the analysts to break down that game a little bit more. So over to you guys.
I mean, breaking down the game, I mean, X7 kind of got broken because Dino, I think we can say the TGV has arrived as GameWard. I don't know what that was. Melonik said, you want a fast series? I want to see a fast series. I didn't want to see a massacre.
I mean, yeah, I think a lot of it started with how the draft went for them, but then in the game as well, you see that GameWard, once you give them an inch, they just run away with the game. And the scary part is that they didn't end up making any of those mistakes that they maybe did in the past that gave X7 a way back in. Like X7 was just shut out of the game completely, and they never got the opportunity to actually turn it around.
And now it's only game 1 though. Do you think they have the fortitude to keep going? Because I mean, this is a harsh loss.
Yeah, 100% they've got the fortitude to keep going. I think that what we saw from that draft was effectively there was an onus on X7 to do well through laning phase, so they could combat when it came to the first couple of fights when it came into the game. When you have things like the Vi and the Amumu, which can really start off the fight very, very well. And what we saw was actually X7, they actually didn't manage to get that much done in lane. Tempt was losing in what is a fairly even matchup in the Ahri versus the Swain. Chasy was doing okay in the top lane, but it wasn't crushing. He certainly didn't impact the map in the way that they needed them to. So in terms of X7 side, I think there's a lot that they can do to just adjust their own level of play before they start going like, oh, how do we deal with what GameWard are doing? There are a couple of things they have to address first.
Yeah, let's start things off coming in with the draft, because looking at the draft in particular, it felt like, yeah, these are drafts I would place with these teams, Nymera.
Yeah, I think that, as we said, we've talked about particularly Chasy being a player that really wants to be affecting the laning phase. But when we go into the first kind of kills of the game, you can see that actually the game's been fairly slow up until this point. But immediately, kill goes down bot side, and if it's coming from lane, Tempt, the rock of X7, the solid part, gets killed in a solo kill without really much to say about it in the mid lane.
Was this the Akabane sports mode you were talking about, Dino?
I mean, yeah, the thing is it's a trusty car, right? It's not an actual sports car, so it's going faster, but it still looks a bit cool, calm, and collected. You see that in the bot lane, they get a small lead, and then when they go to the mid lane, you have that solo kill. But then X7 tries to throw their bodies at the problem. The problem is that GameWard already knows what X7 is going to do before they even do it.
And everything you can see in particularly that last clip as well is that Chasy actually isn't impacting that fight. This fight here, again, it's arguably even worse. Like, you look at this fight and it's just, Chasy's not in the equation. The teleport is channeled after 2 people are already dead at this point. And GameWard, I think that Trouble called it out really, really well within the middle of this game. GameWard were just more decisive.
Now, I'm looking at this fight. I was like, is there anything they could have done better? Because at this point, I mean, the game was kind of lost, right? There wasn't really much to save anymore. I kind of want to talk about Akabane. I mean, we talked about a sports mode, because I feel like Akabane is on, you know, the base. He's like the baseline that GameWard needs, and that's the baseline that they set up very early into the game. We touched upon it in the bot lane, but he manages very well throughout the entire game, Dino.
Yeah, a lot of Akabane's plays and GameWard plays come around shot calling, around neutral objectives, around lanes that are most of the time doing okay. So it's not weird to know that he's a very vital part, but there's just such a stark difference between Akabane that gets an early lead and is able to be like, okay, just follow me into the dive. I'm Vi, I'm going to find whoever is out of position. I'm going to go in and the rest can follow, or in games where Akabane is actually put behind. And I think, although we saw Viking against LDLC and the rest of X7 actually controlling Yike, they didn't really do that much with the early vision ward that Viking put down. Viking got the bot side scuttle, but then in the end they still lost the bot side, they still lost that first gank. So I would like to see X7 try to control Akabane a bit more, because if you give him champions like a Vi and Lee Sin and he runs away with the game, they can't really seem to stop him into mid to late game.
And I think for me, I'm going to take a little bit less of a philosophical overhead approach. You just got to lane better, X7. You look at that mid lane, you look at that top lane.
Just play better, it's easy.
There is something to that, because you look at that Ahri into the Swain matchup, it shouldn't be going like that. You go at the top lane matchup, okay, sure, if you're picking for lane, then you got to smash lane Chasy, otherwise, what's the value of that pick? X7 need to step up on an individual level, I think, at this point.
Well, what do you expect from the next game? Because they have side selection right now. I'm not sure what side they... Because I guess it's going to be blue side?
Well, X7, I think they might prefer... This is the thing, I actually feel like counterpick for the laners of X7 is a very powerful thing. I don't necessarily think it's going to be about the big power picks. I think it is more about where you're going to get your advantages just very early into that game. So I wonder if X7 stay on red.
I think they're fine with red side. They even gave over the Sivir, and they had a plan with the Twitch Yuumi that almost got online with that one gank in the mid lane. I think you don't want to give red side to GameWard, because then they set up Melonik for counter picks, and Chasy is already having not the best start to this series. So I would love a red side, just put Chasy up for success. As you said, Nymera, focus on those solo lanes and just make sure that they have a better game than game 1.
I mean, this post-game breakdown just says it all. That game was just catastrophic for X7, but as I already mentioned, it's not over yet. I mean, the first game, it's something we discussed behind the scenes as well, is like, how much does this first game matter to both of these teams?
Well, I think at the end of the day, it's game one. Maybe X7 have some multiple. You expect you prep multiple drafts for a best of 5, right? You're thinking about different ways you can go about it, and I think that seeing particularly the engaged support coming out of kamilius, I know that's something that you were talking about in the green room a lot, actually, in terms of the difference between the supports. Maybe that's something that they didn't expect as much of coming into this best of 5, particularly since both of these supports played similar champion pools coming into this best of 5. Maybe that's something that they have a look at. Try and flip over that bot lane matchup a little bit, so it affects the team fights later on.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that support matchup because, I mean, it's Kasing versus kamilius. It's a very experienced one. Did you feel like this was all about the bot lane again?
I mean, it wasn't all about the bot lane. I think, for me, the biggest standout performer for X7, definitely in the early game, was Czekolad. The way that he was winning his lane against the rock. Your rock is not supposed to crumble. So X7 really needs Tempt to be there and be very solid. But Czekolad was winning that 1v1. He even got a 1v1 kill. He was up in last hits. And then once the team fights rolled around, the bot lane of a Sivir was really easy to play. kamilius had a very, very good plays. But I distinctly remember Czekolad just running in, pumping out all that damage. So there's an issue to be solved in the solo lanes that you can't solve by winning bot lane.
Very short point now, Donamera. Do you need a more self-sufficient top lane in this case?
I think the top laner is fine, but if you're going to play it like this, you got to impact the game when the team calls for you.
X7 is down 1 game against GameWard, but nothing is lost yet as we have an entire best of 5 to play. We're going to head it over to a break. When we return, it's time for game 2 between GameWard and X7 Esports.